Welcome everyone to In Other Worlds, a LitRPG, gamelit, and fantasy podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and today we have SL Rowland. SL, how are you doing? Do you prefer SL or Steven? Or Steve?
Yeah, I go by Steven on the everyday, but I'll answer to whatever.
I don't know, I just kind of like the way SL sounds.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah. Is that why you chose it? Is that why that's your pen name?
Yeah, a lot of fantasy authors use their initials. So, when I first started out, I was like, you know, it does have a nice little ring to it. Why not go with that?
Yeah. Oh, it does. It sounds good. So you do a lot of cozy fantasy. Your most current book is Halfling's Harvest.
Yes. Actually, I have a copy right here. So,
Yeah, mine is over on my desk on the other side of my office. I'm almost done with it. I'm probably going to finish it today. So
okay,
give us
cool.
a quick rundown of Halfling's Harvest.
So it's basically centers around the Harvest Festival in the town of Willowbrook. It's kind of like a Shire inspired halfling town. And the main character, Marigold, she owns the Dewdrop Vineyard and Inn. Her father started it, and for the past 10 years, she's been running it while they are out traveling the realm and enjoying their retirement. Her father was very renowned winemaker. He won the annual wine contest numerous times, and in her 10 years, the best she's been able to do is second place because of the rival vineyard, Darkroot Cellars. They have a druid on staff that has kind of made everything go a lot smoother.
Damn druids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Harvest Festival is a huge deal in the book.
Yes, it's kind of like so this for this year it's the 577th annual Harvest Festival. So it has a lot of history, a lot of tradition, and people come from the surrounding areas from different kingdoms. Even though Willowbrook is a small town, it's known for its harvest festival.
It's been pretty good. I like that you've got a very old, mostly blind cat that runs around.
Yeah, Onyx.
And it's supposed to be chasing the unicorn bunnies, but does not.
Yeah, I actually had a better idea of him before I even had of like a fully fleshed out version of the main character. And like I had the image of this inn, and it's like surrounded by these little horned rabbits, bunny corn type things. And I was like, I want this giant cat to just be like sitting around. Like, he used to be very fearsome, but now he's like super old and just kind of chills.
I mean, yeah, that's what happens as cats get older.
Yeah.
So you've got in the book one of the things that I found really interesting that you don't see very often. You've got a there's a couple in the book, an elf and a dwarf. You don't see
Yes.
that pairing very often.
Yeah, I thought that would be a lot of fun
Yeah.
because I kind of swapped the gender roles as well because like you have Locke, he's like the super gruff dwarf, but he's also a big softy and the baker at the end. And then you have Alara, the elf, foul-mouthed and like always, trying to get people riled up. And, she's the vintner who, handles all the winemaking and everything.
Yeah, and she likes to cause trouble. The scene with Marigold and Poppy with the pumpkins.
Yeah, she's a mischievous little elf.
She
But
likes to cause some trouble.
I think they all caused a little bit of trouble, because I wanted to make that found family dynamic. And, when you're around your friends, you tease each other a lot. And
Hmm.
like, I wanted to showcase that.
Yeah, you and a lot of your well, I mean, you've got so this is the third book in your Tales of Adria series.
Yes.
And so they've all been very strong on the found family
Y-
aspect.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the key elements of cozy fantasy is, people are searching for that found family, somewhere to belong, and that's what kind of, you know, gives you a comforting, cozy feel, regardless of whatever else might happen, you have these people to fall back on, and you like kind of find your place in the world, even if it's not, the family that you were born with.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the family that we find along the way is better than some of the family that we have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the other two books in the series are Curse of Cocktails and Sword and Thistle.
Yes. Let's see. I think I have them on hand as well. So, Curse Cocktails.
Fantastic.
Yes, the it's about a blood mage who suffers from chronic pain, and he ends up earning his retirement from defending the realm. So he moves south, and with a book of recipes that he inherited from his father, and he ends up starting a tavern. And then,
So for Curse of Cocktails, on your TikTok a lot, you talk about how one of the biggest inspirations for this character was your own personal struggles with an autoimmune disease.
yes, yes.
How did that help influence the character?
I mean, so I've been kind of dealing with an autoimmune disease. I guess I don't know, probably like 8 years now. And for like 4 years, it was like undiagnosed, and so it took me a while to like kind of understand what was going on. So I had to deal with the effects of it, without treatment for a long time. Mine is a kind of form of inflammatory arthritis, so it's like a lot of soft tissue injuries, and not so much the bones, but like all that connective tissue that holds everything together gets inflamed, and so they're like prone to tearing and more. And you get a lot of burning sensation, a lot of just kind of achiness, and I kind of, as this story was coming to me, like I was like, what kind of magic would most like mirror that. And so then I was like thinking like blood magic, and like, because the cost to use blood magic often is like, from within. Like there's no mana, there's
Mhm.
no like there's nothing that you're pulling from your own body, or you're pulling from someone else's body, but I didn't want to go with that route.
That's a little dark for a cozy fantasy.
Yeah. So I was like, and how cool would it be for, a lot of blood mages are seen as evil, or like, even on the anti-hero side, but like what if he's using that power for good, and at the same time, it's causing him pain, but there's no one else in the realm that can stop these monsters that live up in the frozen north, because they have like these impenetrable hides that are magically resistant, and the only option is to have these blood mages go up there and keep them from coming down into civilization.
Yeah, and and for the main character was Rorin, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that actually mirrors a lot of how what you wrote into his character with the joint pain and the muscle stiffness, because he experiences that a lot in the books.
Yeah, I wanted it to be something that, there's no magic cure for it. Like, there are clerics all throughout my world. They can heal
Mhm.
just about anything that's like, cut, scrape, bruise, broken bones, whatever. But there are certain things, like, blood magic or cursed items or things like that, that clerics can't heal. And so like I didn't want it to be like a hand wave and like he's feeling better. The only way that the pain goes away is when he doesn't use his magic. And like for people with autoimmune diseases, a lot of the time, the only way that pain goes away is if, they're not doing things that aggravate it.
Right. Or they move somewhere warm.
Yeah. I remember like when I was in middle school or primary school or something, like, we'd read about these authors and poets from like the 1700s, and how they would all move from like England to Italy because the climate would like help them with their a lot of respiratory diseases back then. And so I think that's
Mhm.
just kind of like stuck in my head in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably would move too, somewhere nice and warm. Yeah, I can't fault him for it. So, and now Sword and Thistle.
Yes, Sword and Thistle. So this one was more of a cozy fantasy adventure. So I wanted to kind of like push the boundaries of what cozy fantasy could be, that it doesn't necessarily have to be settling down in a new place, that it could be, there could be action involved, there could be exploration and, dangers, but still have that cozy vibe. For Dobbin, he's the main character, and he's an adventurer, older main character in his he's well known throughout the realm for like getting the job done. But he's kind of haunted by his own ghost of a friend that he lost in a quest, a while back. And ever since that happened, he's kind of just he doesn't work in groups anymore. He stays to himself. He does his job, but like he doesn't want the responsibility of having to, look out for anyone else to make sure that they're not hurt. So then he goes on this adventure, and it's kind of his way of learning that you can open up again and, making peace with what happened in the past. And, I thought it would be interesting if, he's haunted by the ghosts of his past, so why not send him into the haunted ruins where there are ghosts everywhere?
Right. I mean, why not? Did you have a hard time kind of balancing the adventuring aspect of the book, but keeping it as a cozy fantasy? Because you don't get, like, in cozy fantasies, you don't really get a whole lot of adventuring usually.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a fine balance because like you can still have the battles and the fights, but like the way you depict it is different. You don't necessarily show the gruesome bits. You show the struggle and you show how he's able to overcome that. But a lot of the struggle is internal as opposed to external in that regard.
You kind of just barely gloss over like the fights and
Yeah. What you just kind of, I guess, you want it to feel dangerous, but you don't want it to feel like hopeless.
yeah.
Whereas in like, traditional fantasy, you just want to keep like pummeling them with obstacle after
Hmm.
obstacle. And like, if there's a struggle, you want to follow that with something that is more calm and comforting, so it's more like a roller coaster instead of just like a free fall.
Right. You got to balance it out. I personally, female dwarf with a beard is amazing.
Yeah.
To me, they're
Yeah.
all supposed to have beards,
It's a lot of
and you just don't see that a lot. I
contention
loved it.
over that. Yeah, I
Uh,
like I like female dwarves with beards. I think I got that from uh, Terry Pratchett, and I think Tolkien mentions it as well.
hmm.
But yeah, I don't know, I think it's fitting to have them with their beards. And the project I'm working on now is another bearded uh female dwarf, but she'll be the main character this time.
Yeah, I think at one point in the Lord of the Rings, it was either the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit series. I can't remember. I think it's Gimli talks. He's got a picture of his wife, and
Yeah,
she has a
they're on
beard.
horseback, and he's like talking about how, you can't tell the difference between
Yeah.
a male and a female.
Yeah, I love it. That they're just supposed to have
Yeah.
beards. That's the way it's supposed to be. So the your world of Adria that you've built is massive. It's a very large
Yes.
world. Like even the map is really, really big. How did you struggle at all with creating this whole huge world? Like, do you have a plan for all of it?
I have a lot of plans, a lot of notes, but it's kind of something that I build up as I go along. And, with each new story, the world deepens. I started out, I knew I wanted it to be like a sprawling epic world so that like I could tell an endless amount of stories in, dozens of locations. And if I never wanted to revisit the same location twice, I wouldn't have to. So there's 9 realms. There's like 5 or 6 different races. Each kingdom has its own government. There's a sprawling pantheon of gods, and some of those have been developed. Some of them, I find them as I need them for whatever the story might tell. But like each piece is like, a piece of the puzzle that just keeps getting put together and it keeps building and growing. And like I have numerous folders of just, details and cities and towns and all these like little historical sites that, I may never use, but I have them if I need them.
I mean, it's good to have stuff squirreled away for whatever you might need it for. So, how many books do you think that you might end up writing in just this kind of world in general?
I mean, I don't really see a limit, because I mean, I'm working on the fourth in the Tales of Adria now. I have ideas for a more epic, like grimdark storyline set in the same world.
Hmm.
I have ideas for like a more action adventure series set in the same world. And like I think one thing that appealed to me by making it so large is that I could, I could have multiple series that tell completely different types of stories, but they're all grounded, in the world building. Like, I mean, I could even tell a story of, Roran the Blood Mage, you know, from when he was working in the guard, and it's, a much more bloody, sad,
Yeah.
type story. You can see a character from two different points of views. Both of them are right, but it's the lens of the viewer.
Yeah. So book 4 is actually up for pre-order right now on Amazon.
Yeah, so for pre-order.
There be dragons here.
I think this one is going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a little more similar to Sword and Thistle with like some adventuring aspects. But it's basically the premise is you have this old dwarven grandmother who used to be an adventurer. Once she gave that behind, she's like 182 years old now. And so for like the past 70 years, she's just been chilling in the mountains, raising a family, being the typical dwarf. But, she spent like almost 100 years, going around doing adventures. And, she likes to collect monster teeth, she writes down all her old little stories. Nobody quite believes it's true because,
Pretty cool thing to collect. Monster teeth.
yeah, the story, I thought it would be fun, to start a cozy fantasy with a funeral. And so it starts out with, one of her old adventuring buddies. He passed away, and so she makes the travel to go to the funeral. And not long after, she gets a package that has his ashes in it, and it also has a note and a map that says that, he wants her to go scatter his ashes at this mountain range that's on the map. And then
Hmm.
she opens it up, and like scrawled in letters across the map is "There be dragons here."
Boy.
So
So I'm assuming she's gonna run into some dragons.
she's getting.
Nice. So I know in Curse of Cocktails, one of the characters from Sword and Thistle was briefly mentioned. Do you
Yes.
see there being very much crossover between any of the books?
There's usually at least one character that pops up across them. I have an idea for who it's going to be in this one. Not gonna spoil it yet, but yeah. So like between Curse Cocktails and Sword and Thistle, those two had the most like direct crossover because there's one
Mm,
chapter that's like you see the point of view from the bartender in Cursed Cocktails, and then you see the point of view of the adventurer who goes into the bar. It's the exact same scene from two different points of view.
right.
But then in the Halfling's Harvest, you there's one of the characters that Dobbin meets during Sword and Thistle that goes to the inn for a little bit. So it's always fun like connecting those dots, but not in a way that, you have to have read one to understand the other.
Yeah, so it's just kind of little cameos,
Yeah, it's kind of
little
like you know,
ride-bys.
in the Marvel movies where somebody shows up for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, how they all had Stan Lee in them.
Yeah.
Every single one. So Curse of Cocktails has an entire recipe book of drinks in it that can actually be made in with liquors that we have.
Yes.
How did you decide on what drinks were going to be in there and what the recipes were going to be?
So
Are you like a secret connoisseur
before
bartender?
before I became a full-time author, I waited tables for 10 years at various like upscale and like fine dining restaurants. So I kind of developed a bit of knowledge around, different wines and spirits and things like that. So I wanted, when I started writing Cursed Cocktails, I was like, it would be cool if all the drinks that are in here have a real world equivalent. So basically, I reached out to one of my friends, Sean, and he's a bartender, and like he much more knowledgeable than me. Uh, and so like I told him like kind of the vibe I was looking to catch with each of the drinks and like the location and like where, because like each drink has kind of like a story of why it's included
Hmm.
in their drink menu. So he gave me like a list to choose from. I went through and like picked out the ones that I liked, and then I took the different elements of them, kind of gave them a fantasy twist, but still kept the kind of the base of it the same. And so on my website, I offer a download for a free PDF that has all the drinks, how the recipes in the book, but then also their real world equivalent that they're based on. So
And does that PDF also have like the little stories behind the
no,
drink?
that would be fun, but I was like, that's a lot of
That'd be a
work.
lot.
But they have pictures and they have everything you need, instructions on how to make it and whatnot. But maybe one day I'll go back in and expand it
Have you tried them all?
in some form or another. Yeah. Like some of them I had just had tried previously. Some of them I made to try. But yeah, they're all pretty delicious.
What's your favorite one?
I mean, I like a good Moscow Mule. So like, there's the cocktail. It's called the Netherland Mule because that's the city in there. So it's basically just the kind of the same thing. But then sometimes I like had to give it like, how did they get what part of the realm are they getting limes from? Where are they getting soda water? Because they can't actually carbonate it.
Right.
So then I had the idea for like a natural mineral spring that produced soda water, and some industrious soul decided to bottle it and start selling it.
I mean, it's genius. So you did a Kickstarter for Curse of Cocktails and Sword and Thistle. Do you see yourself doing a Kickstarter for the rest of the books in the world?
Uh, I do, but I'm also changing up the way that I do things. So with the first two, it was kind of like me just figuring out the Kickstarter platform and like how everything worked. So I basically made these like special edition book boxes where I hired an artist to make new cover art. I got like stickers and like vellum inserts and
Right
yeah,
there.
got a fancy little box. But
Yeah, see it
it was
on
a
my
lot of
shelf.
work because I had to go through and like had to put each book, had to put a dust jacket on each book. I had to put the inserts inside of it. I had to put like every single element I had to do myself. So, but now
Wow.
I'm looking at doing a more like premium deluxe edition that has like the faux leather cover, the foil, the colored end paper, sprayed edges, things like that, where I can have someone else do all of that, and then all I have to do is sign it. And I mean, I think for one, it will feel like a much nicer product.
Hmm.
And like part of my reason was because I wanted to offer something nicer, but also as more books come out in this world, the idea of putting together hundreds of books by
I mean,
hand each
that's,
time,
yeah,
because
that's a lot of work.
when I offered book two, I still had to offer book one, and so and then you'd have people buying both, so that it was
Hmm.
like double the work.
I think I'm one of the people who got both.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful. It's a good experience, but like doing that, I basically have to take a week off from everything else just to put together boxes and ship them out. And with each new book, it'll just be more and more and more.
Yeah,
Where
because you'll get people who didn't do the previous ones who will be like, "Oh, I want the other two now," and so then it's triple the
yeah,
number of books. That's a lot. I didn't even think about that. That you did that all yourself.
yeah. So I mean, it was a cool experience. It was some work.
So if you're doing like a more premium one, possibly for the next book, will you be offering the first two books in the same style
Yeah,
as
I'll be
the
redoing
third one?
the first two as well. So basically, people will have the option to get all three, and I'm thinking about possibly doing a slipcase that they can all fit into.
Man, that's where you guys get me because
But I
I'm
mean,
gonna have to have all of them in the same style.
yeah, but it's been like a year and a half, 2 years since the last one. So I think, you know, people put out special editions more often than that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got some people who own, 6 copies of one book.
Yeah, that's me. Like,
That's you.
like Legends and Lattes and Dungeon Crawler Carl. I
Oh,
have
yeah.
like multiple editions of
Yeah.
both of those.
I'm not giving Matt Tinneman that much of my money.
Yeah.
So before Tales of Adria, before you were doing the cozy fantasy, you were in the lit RPG realm. Your first novel was not Pangea Online, but was Land of the Dogs, which wasn't the lit RPG.
Yeah,
It was like a zombie
that was like a zombie
apocalypse.
apocalypse. So I wrote that one. That was my first attempt at a novel. So probably,
I think it was like 2017. I do a lot of
yeah.
research.
Yeah, it's probably like 10 or
Do some
12
deep
years ago. Like
dive.
that was not even available anymore. I think there may be
No.
like 20 copies of it like in existence.
Yeah, I mean, it's got an ISBN, so at some point it was available, but if it's not
Yeah, but
now,
uh when I first like started writing, I was really into like post-apocalyptic fiction. I did a lot. I wrote short stories and things like that in college. But it wasn't until I was like 27 that I was like, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna write a novel. And like I was super into Walking Dead at the time. And so it was basically took a lot of inspiration from that. And but I was not a very good writer at the time. So that's why you can't find it
that's why
anymore.
I can't find it anymore. So, do you ever like see yourself going back and rewriting it? Was it like a story that you just loved?
I went back and rewrote it one time, but then it's just like there's a lot of problems with it. I was like, it's not worth putting it out there. But it was a fun story, but it's just not good for people.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole premise is that a guy like falls into a lake, and when he wakes up, there's zombies. It's the
Yeah, it was
zombie
kind of it was
apocalypse.
like, this kid was at his family's lake house for the summer and he dives off the lake and when he comes up, everything's different. So it's like, did he like pass into some new dimension? Did he hit his head and this is all a dream? What exactly is happening? But then it's like his way of like finding out what's going on in this post-apocalyptic world.
It's a good premise for a story. There was a trilogy of books called The Beyonders, where a guy is at a zoo and he falls into the hippo enclosure and gets swallowed whole by a hippo, but inside of the hippo is a portal to another to
Wow.
another world. And so when he surfaces, he's in this other world. And like when he makes it back to our universe, he needs to get back. And so he like jumps back into the hippo enclosure to try to get the hippo to
Yeah,
swallow him again. It's a kooky book. It's a really fun series. It's
that
3 books
sounds like it.
long. It was interesting. So Pangea Online was, I guess, then like the first real series that you've
Yeah,
written and
it was.
kept out.
Yeah, when I wrote Land of the Dogs, like I hadn't done a whole lot of research on publishing or anything like that. I just wanted to write a novel. And when I started working on Angie Online, like I knew I wanted to go down the indie publishing route. So I had much more of a I guess a trajectory that I wanted to follow. Like I wrote the early chapters, put them on Royal Road, got a lot of feedback. I still kind of cringe when I read some of that book just because I was like a new author and hadn't learned a whole lot. But I got lucky, it had a following and it did really well and kind of convinced me that I could make a go at this if I put in the work.
I mean, that was the first series that I read of yours was Pangea Online. I
Yeah,
liked it. I mean,
it's
obviously I liked it because I read more of your books.
It's the typical like 2017, 2018 virtual reality lit RPG, kind of Ready Player One-esque
Hmm.
without the pop culture references. There's multiple game worlds and a tournament. Like when I first started that, I was like, I'm just going to write so many books in this world because they were lit RPG series were like, 6, 7, 8 books and still going.
Hmm.
But then I was like, after book two, I was like, I've kind of become a better writer, and why am I? showing off my worst writing as like how I want to hook people into me. So I ended up finishing it with 3 books. So it's kind of like a disjointed trilogy, but it has some fans, and Justin from and Lori from Sound Booth Theater, they definitely took it up a notch with the audiobook.
Yeah, Justin Thomas James is a phenomenal narrator.
Yes, I was.
I haven't listened to the audio version of Pangea Online, but he's
Yeah,
really good.
it was the first book he did with Sound Booth Theater.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's good. So yeah, it was very like Ready Player One-esque. Kind of like that underdog that you really want to root for that just ends up getting that break and
Yeah,
being able to
yeah,
do great
poor
things.
little orphan kid.
And like working in mines and
Yeah, the data mines.
yeah, which was hilarious, I think.
Yeah, I always like sometimes when I'm starting a book, I have just like this scene or this image that like I want to capture at some point in the book, and I was just like I thought it was so interesting to like have someone working in a data mine, and as like they're like swinging the pickaxe, these little green numbers are just like flying down past them.
It's an, it's an actual mine. It was
Yeah.
hilarious. And so then after that, you did Sentence to Troll, which was 6 books long.
Yes.
Also very good LitRPG series.
Yes.
What was your
Sinister Troll. That was the one that allowed me to go full time as an author. I still look back at that one, and there's some things that I would have done differently. Like I was really into the first person present tense at the time, which I mean it's pretty common in like certain romance, certain dystopian and like young adult things, but it's not. It's definitely a barrier between the author and the reader, as you know, some people will complain about it. Writing in past tense, you don't really doesn't matter. People are used to that, so they don't complain about it. But
hmm
it can be jarring to some.
Yeah. So what was your inspiration for that particular series?
I wanted to write a monster main character. But instead of just going full in on a monster, I had to be weird with it. And I was like, what if it was a troll, an online troll who became a troll as his like, his punishment for being a little jerk. So that's what I did. The
Yeah.
main character, he's not a professional gamer, but he's like a streamer, and he has a little following because, he talks a lot of
Smack.
trash, yeah, and he's in this like, celebrity match or whatever, and he ends up just like losing his mind and like berating this person, says a lot of bad things. So he is like the first victim, or not victim, the first person, to face the consequences of this new cyberbullying law that has just came into effect in his city. And as the punishment, the judge decides to let him try out this new form of virtual rehabilitation, where he'll have to be a troll in this game world where they are despised and hated, so that he can kind of learn to experience what it's like to be on the other side of
hmm
that.
I can't imagine very many gamers who would think that that's a punishment, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm gonna have to serve my sentence playing a video game. Oh no.
Yeah. So that it ends up being like kind of the company that is running the virtual reality game is like, this big gaming company, and they're like using the prisoners to like test out their new tech. And so like that's why they want him in there.
hmm
But then there's some readers that are like, this would never happen in real life.
I mean, you never know. It
And
might
I'm like,
someday.
there's so much shady things that go on that
Yeah.
that people sweep under the rug. I think it's all
Yeah.
pretty plausible.
Yeah. I absolutely loved Limery in that series.
Yeah, if you love him or hate him, I guess.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone not liking him as a character.
There's a couple. Every now and then I get a comment. It's like I hate this little golem wannabe.
He's
Uh,
just so cute and
yeah,
childlike.
yeah, he's very
Adorable.
endearing.
And so loyal. So it's 6 books, and a lot of times you'll read a series of books or just kind of a run of a story, and you get to the point at the end and you're just like, man, I really like, I wish there was more, or I wish that it had ended differently. But with Sentence to Troll, I think it was really wrapped up very nicely.
Okay.
Like, I couldn't reading it, I couldn't have imagined it ending any other way, and I just had that moment at the end where I was like, "Aw, that's so cute."
Yeah, I wanted to give it a, a fitting conclusion. When I first started writing it, I didn't know how long it would be, but I had an end game in mind, and it was basically, how many books between book one and the final book, how many, subplots, quests, whatever, will he go on to get him ready for this? And there came a point where I was like, it's time to wrap it up. And I was in the car on vacation, driving down to Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I knew it was time to end it, but I didn't know how to pivot from the end of book five to book six. And but then it just kind of it came to me while I was driving, and so I was like, okay, this is it. We can wrap it up with six books, and hopefully people will enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it was a very satisfying ending to a series. Probably one of my favorite.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I published the first one in 2018, and the last one came out in 2024. So it was like 6 years where like this series was just kind of looming over me, and I was ready to start something new, but also I didn't want to leave readers hanging and just waiting on a book forever.
Yeah. Well, that's, I don't think that like, I don't think that one book a year roughly is all that bad. You get a lot of like, a lot of authors who do series will release like one a year or
Yeah, it's not
less than that.
bad, not bad for traditionally published authors, but in the indie space and lit RPG specifically,
Yeah.
so many authors are putting out, three, four books a year. You got people like Sean Oswald putting out almost a book a month.
Which is insane.
And so like readers get used to that fast release. And,
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason is like, I took breaks. I took a break between book two and three. I took a break between books five and six to do other projects. And so, like, that really slows the momentum. And, like, necessarily not everyone who has been following along is going to come back to it when you take that long, especially in a genre where there's just so much coming out all the time.
Yeah.
So, it got to a point where the time, I'm a very slow writer. So the time that it would take me to write another book was just not, lining up with what I needed to make to survive. So that was also like part of the reason why I wrapped it up in six books instead of like, eight or 10.
Do you think that you'll ever go back to writing in the lit RPG genre?
Yeah, I'm actually going back. My next project is going to be Path to Villainy, an NPC kobold's tale.
Yeah.
It's about an NPC kobold who becomes self-aware, and then he remembers like what all of the the player characters, the heroes, have all the bad things they've done to him over the years. And so once he gets all those memories, like he wants revenge. In 2020, like when the pandemic was happening, uh, this was one of the breaks that I took between Sinister Troll. Is like I just needed an escape to work on something that like had no pressure with it. And so I wrote this little
Yeah.
novella. It was like 40,000 words, and it did okay for being the length that it was. And then for 4 or 5 years, I just never even really thought about it much because it's hard to promote a short little book or and run ads on something when it's not going to lead into the next book. And then
Right.
you're just kind of like burning money at that point. But then last year, I put it up on TikTok, and it started selling like crazy. And people kept asking, is there going to be a sequel? I want more of this. And
Oh, yeah.
so I was like, okay. I get my audio rights to it back at the end of 2025. And so it was like, this is the perfect time. Once I finish this next project, I'm gonna go back through and rewrite what's already there, so it's in my like current voice and style and everything, and then
Hmm.
expand it into a at least a full length novel and possibly a series. So it'll probably end up being like, 3 or 4 times the length that the novella was. And I think I'm excited. It should be a lot of fun.
That's really cool. And so is that going to take place in the Sentence to Troll universe?
Oh no, it's its own kind of little world. You know, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna do some really heavy world building with it and like just make sure that I have everything in place to where if I want it to be a series or if I want to tell, a lot of standalone novels set in the same world, kind of like I do with my
With
cozy
Tales
fantasy
of
books.
Adria.
I want to, set it up strong.
You are super big on the world building.
Yeah,
That is like,
it's my favorite part.
why is the world building your favorite part, do you think?
I mean, I just it's what I enjoy reading about, like when I'm reading a fantasy novel, like I really like, the flavor that's put in there of like, feeling like you're, you're seeing the world through the main character's eyes, but you're aware that there's so much more out there. And like, sometimes a one-off sentence is just a one-off sentence, but like if it like sparks something in the back of your mind that has you wondering, like, okay, if this is happening, then what else might be happening? I think it's really fun.
That is kind of cool. So you've got plans to return to LitRPG and then more stories in your cozy fantasy world. But you do think that you're going to kind of at some point venture outside of the LitRPG and cozy fantasy and do like a grim dark
Yeah, I think
kind of thing?
grimdark, epic fantasy, just something in the world that I've already built that, a more epic
You're not going to go build
storyline.
an entire new world.
Yeah, gotta recycle all these ideas that I have.
Not bad. So what were you like a big reader when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's like what I probably did the most. I lived out in the country of a small town. There weren't a lot of like neighborhood kids to play with. I had my brothers, but I would always be reading something.
What were some of your favorites?
Yeah, I read a lot of the Goosebumps books when I was like,
Those were so good.
middle school. When I was in high school, I got more into epic fantasy. I read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. That was like, I think I was in like ninth grade or something when the Fellowship of the Ring was first coming out. So I was very cool to be able to read those and then also like go watch them and see the differences and the similarities between them. And then,
Yeah, I loved the Goosebumps books growing up.
yeah,
Those and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark
okay, yeah.
was another series that I really loved. And then like Shel Silverstein. I never got into the Lord of the Rings though. That was not something that I ever read
What a
growing
shame.
up. I know, I
Uh,
should have. I'm surprised I never did with how much I read.
Well, I had a neighbor. He was kind of like my Gandalf growing up. He's an old man with like gray hair, but he loved fantasy and he loved gardening. He had this like amazing rose garden and stuff in his backyard, and I would always, scurry over there and like help him watering the plants and putting down the mulch and everything. But he would always talk to me about fantasy books and things like that. And actually, he let me borrow his Lord of the Rings, which was like, it was one of those like leather bound, huge ones,
Wow.
all three books in one that,
Oof.
you know, probably worth a small fortune today. But that was my first experience with it.
That would have been very intimidating for me when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because Goosebumps books, they weren't super big books.
Yeah, I could read a Goosebumps book in a day, after school. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I think I first read that when I was like in ninth grade, so probably like, 13, 14 years old.
That's impressive. I still to this day
Didn't
like
fully understand it all.
yeah. I like to go to like my local Goodwills and scour the book sections because sometimes you'll find, like, real gems in there, and I'm always keeping my eye out for Goosebumps books, and I never find them. No one ever donates Goosebumps books.
I saw a few not
It's a
too long
shame.
ago. So
Yeah, I wanna start a little Goosebumps collection. I think that'd be fun.
yeah, there's like hundreds of them, I think.
Yo, there's a lot, yeah. There's a lot. So what other than reading and writing, what do you like to do?
I help my dog a lot. He's actually right here at my feet. Let's see, sleeping.
The cutest dog ever.
Yeah, he's the reason why there are so many animal companions in my books. I've had him for almost 12 years now. But I enjoy weightlifting. That's one of my favorite, ways to just kind of decompress and, you know, get away from everything.
Mhm.
Has been a struggle at times with an autoimmune disease, but like once I got on my, every 6 weeks I do an infusion, I have way fewer setbacks than I did before. Um, I enjoy hiking. I watch a lot of sports. I'm a gaming nerd and also a sports nerd because I play like fantasy football and things like that.
That's intense. Fantasy football, that's you really like football.
Yeah, I'm in several leagues. I'm in one league with a bunch of authors, and so like our buy-in each year is that we'll send the winner signed books. So
That's aw
yeah, I think I've won 4 out of 7 years, I think.
holy cow.
And we have a little trophy that used to have like a little D20 on it.
That's cute. What are some of the best books you've read recently?
So I recently read a couple of books because I'm going to be on a panel with some other cozy fantasy authors, and The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durr. That one was really good. It's very cozy fantasy about a librarian who's like escaping. There's like a revolution that they oppose the king and like they're setting fire to the city and like the library is about to burn. So like she loads up all of these as many spell books as she can carry into her little sailboat with her talking spider plant and
Cute.
they sail away to her childhood home on this island like at the edge of the kingdom. It was very like cozy, kind of quaint story. A little more romance than normally read, but it was really good and like very whimsical. When I first started reading it, I didn't know if it would be like how much the fantasy aspect would play into it. But there
Mhm.
were some moments where I was like, okay, this is just some cool world building.
Nice.
And right now, I'm reading a book called Recipes from an Unexpected Afterlife, I think it's called, by Destin Munden. So that one releases, I think, I want to say August or September. So I got an arc of it. And it's about this former Death Knight who, he earns his retirement and he opens a restaurant. It's such a like a warm and like wholesome book that is also juxtaposed with like all of his memories of being a Death Knight and like
Yeah.
so it's like it's a lot of darkness, but it's also a lot of light, and they play together really well, like something I haven't seen done in cozy fantasy before. So it's
That's
pretty
neat.
cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I used to play many, many, many years ago. I played EverQuest 2. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was an MMO that came
I'm
out a long
familiar with
time
it. I
ago.
I never played it. We didn't get a good internet out in the country, so like I could never play any of those online games.
And I played a gnome that I had made because you could kind of adjust the height a little bit. I made her as short as I possibly could. And I think the class was called Death Knight, or it was something very similar to that. But she used to run around in like this full crazy plate mail. And
Yeah,
I
sounds
just went
sounds about
nuts.
right.
It was so much fun. She was so tiny. I named her Reese Fizzlesticks. That was fun. So you are all over TikTok. You're
So
very active
so
on
so I
TikTok.
hear. Yeah,
How do you think that that has helped you reach new readers or find like a new audience?
I think. TikTok has hands down one of the best algorithms of like any social media for like showing people what it is, more of what they are already engaging with. So that can be both a, blessing and a curse. Like my TikTok, I only follow bookish creators. I only engage with book related things. So then that's all I see. And, you know, readers are the same way. If they like the book talk side of things, it's just going to keep showing them more and more books and creators that are similar to the ones that they already like. And yeah, it's been great for me. I've kind of built a pretty decent following on there. I've sold a lot of signed copies through TikTok. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to get signed copies of books from an author, just in general. That and their websites. I think usually it's either you can order it from directly from their website or from the TikTok shop, and
Yeah,
most of the time they come signed.
I need to get some set up on my website. I mean, TikTok Shop is, region specific, so I can only, do to the people in the US. But my website just got the kind of capability to that I can start listing my stuff on there. I just have to go through and set it all up.
Just get it done.
Yeah.
So I know you're going to be at a convention here soon.
Yeah, so I guess depending on when this goes out, at the end of May, I will be at the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books on May 31st. I'm doing a cozy fantasy panel. It's like 10 a.m. on Saturday, and then I'll be doing a signing after. Um, And then in July, I'll be at LitRPG
That gets you
Con in
packed.
Denver. That'll be fun. August, I have Enchanticon in St. Louis. And then in September, I'll be doing Dragon Con. So from July to September, it's going to be pretty busy for me.
What do you have anything in your TBR that you're most looking forward to reading?
Let's see. I just picked up this book, House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. I've heard a lot of good things that was going on around TikTok for a while. I can't remember the premise, but I remember I was excited for it.
Nice.
And then I just ordered all of the signed hardcovers of The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. I've read the first one, I've read the first novella, but there's still three others. And those are really like chonky epic fantasies. I've heard a lot of good things about The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. So that's like a new series that he's putting out, so you don't need to like know all of his other stuff. So I'm excited to check that out. I have hundreds of books on my Kindle that I need to get through. I just keep
Yeah.
buying them and they just keep stacking up.
Yeah, I'll need to live like I don't know, 160 years old in order to catch up if I stopped just stopped buying books.
Yeah, like I see like
There's
there's
so
always
many.
these humble bundles that show up, so then I need the complete
The
collection of
Wheel of Time
Terry
series.
Pratchett. Yes, I need the
Yeah, the
complete
complete
Wheel of
Wheel of Time
Time.
series was one that they just did recently. I love Humble Bundle.
Yep, I bought it and I'm like,
Yep.
it'll probably take me a year to read through all those.
Yep. Yeah, I thought about it, but I hate my Kindle, so I
I
don't
love I love the Kindle.
I just can't. I can't do it. I have to have the physical books.
The physicals are only for special editions and signed books. They go on my shelf and I'm still running out of room.
Nice. So, where can everyone find you? Like, where can they buy your books at?
So all of my ebooks are on Amazon. Most of those are exclusive with Amazon right now, so you can read them in Kindle Unlimited. All of my physical books, they're available everywhere, pretty much anywhere books are sold. You can request them to your local bookstores, your local libraries. You can get those wherever you want. Right now, about half of my audiobooks are available everywhere. The other half is Audible exclusive, but by the end of the summer, I'll have everything out there wide as well. So like I'm slowly transitioning from that Amazon ecosystem into like the broader
Mhm.
world, just because I really like libraries. They were great for me growing up, so I always enjoy putting my books out there for the people who need them.
Yeah, and so then if they want signed copies, they can get them off your TikTok shop?
Oh yeah, signed copies are on TikTok, and then also hopefully they'll be on my website you know,
Fingers crossed.
in a month or two maybe.
How can people find you on TikTok?
So pretty much everywhere I am at SL Rowland author. So that's my Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And my website is slrowland.com, where you can find pretty much links to everything over there.
Including your Discord and Patreon? Nice. That's a pretty nice little giveaway you're doing.
Yeah, I've had like 150 people sign up in the past week or two, so it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I've seen the Discord kind of get a little bit busy.
Yeah, they're flocking over.
I took a couple days away from Discord to go to a wedding, and I come back and I'm like, man, there's so many notifications.
Yeah, most of them are just people who have their Patreon link to Discord, so like
Mhm.
they never stop by, but they're always there.
Yeah, it's Matt Dinnemans too. His Discord it's excessively busy. I
But yeah,
can't keep up with it.
his is chaos.
Yeah, I don't even really try anymore.
Everything with him is chaos.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was fun. I
But yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me. I'm happy to be one of your first few guests.
Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. I will have the links for SL Rowland's books and socials in the description of the video, so they'll be easy to find. And don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find me on YouTube and all major podcasting platforms. And until next time, keep leveling up.